So welcome again to our session on technical assistance for MFIs. The idea, as I was saying, is to have an interactive workshop on best practices and challenges in managing TA for MFIs. So please feel free once again to jump into the conversation, share your experiences, drop any comments you have, any suggestions you have with the assembly, because that's really the idea today. And so to initiate the session, I will start with a quick presentation of a publication we've recently done at the Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation on the management of technical assistance. So I'll just share the main lessons and the main conclusions of this study briefly, just to feed a little bit the conversation. And then the idea is really, as I was saying, to move into this open discussion with all our panelists today, and hopefully with all of you as well. Because that's really what we aim to do. So we have 5 panelists, 5 speakers today. We have Matthew Genazzini, who is working for ADA and also more specifically as the program coordinator for the SNUP program that he will present us. We have Julie Torres Zantier with us as well. She's working as a capacity building manager at CD. And also Gabrielle Orliange, who is a social and environmental manager at CD. And we have the great pleasure to have also with us Benedetta Ferraro from Microfinanza. And I'll be, of course, representing the Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation. Just a few really quick words on the Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation before we jump into presenting the results of our study and then opening the discussions. So the foundation was created in 2008 with the mission to fight against poverty and inequalities. And so to do so, we support MFIs and projects and social enterprises that promote rural development and inclusive finance. We do that through funds, through investments, and since 2013, we also do that through technical assistance. As of September, we were working with 71 MFIs, 11 impact enterprises, and a portfolio of 87 million euros. And as you can see here on the slide, since 2013, we have supported 47 institutions through technical assistance in 21 countries, mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. We are currently coordinating 6 different technical assistance programs for a total of 7.1 million euros of grants under management. So we have grants from the French Development Agency, and I can see Marine Lagarde from EFD actually. We have the funds from the European Investment Bank, from SIDA, the Swedish International Development Agency, SCBF, Proparco, and also more recently through the SNUP program that Matthew will present us later on. So since 2013, we've been managing more than 300 TA missions in very, very different topics, really varied topics. For instance, human resources, risk management, financial management, social and environmental impact. So 8 years after the launch of our first TA program, actually with the French Development Agency, we actually wanted to commission an independent evaluation to really evaluate the outcome of our TA and also to draw practical lessons and recommendations to improve the direct impact of our TA on the beneficiaries. So we selected the consulting firm Cerise to conduct this study. It was based on qualitative and quantitative analysis of more than 300 missions, and also on interviews, surveys with the beneficiary institutions, with TA providers, and with funders as well. So based on this study, and also based on our own experience managing TA over the past 8 years, we drew some lessons that I'm going to present. And so I'm not going to be able, of course, to go into all the details about this study, but you can find it online and on our website. But I wanted to present you at least the 10 main lessons and recommendations we drew from this study, just to open the conversation. So the first recommendation we drew from the study is actually to have a demand-driven approach, for setting up TA missions. We think that a demand-driven approach is really key to make sure that the TA missions really fit with the needs of the beneficiary institutions, and also to make sure that the TA will have the greatest impact because it really fits with the top priorities of the institutions. What we've seen also over the past 8 years is that, of course, the needs of the institutions change a lot over time, and that they can change actually very fast and very dramatically. And of course, the COVID-19 pandemic was a very good illustration of that. We had ourselves to change and adapt more than 30 TA missions due to the COVID pandemic. So our recommendation on that is really to, first of all, never impose any TA, any specific theme to beneficiary institutions, but rather to be really in a position where we listen actively to them to understand their needs, to understand what are their true priorities, and also to understand what are their constraints in implementing TA. And so our recommendation as well is to incorporate as much flexibility as possible into TA programs to be able to adapt the TA activities whenever it is needed. The second main finding of the study is that MFIs actually have very diversified TA needs. So of course, the intervention of experts and experts' time is very useful, and we've done that a lot over the past 8 years. But what we've found out as well is that sometimes experts' time is not enough, and that MFIs can have other TA needs. For instance, they can have needs to acquire equipment, to acquire IT solutions, to have exchange and learning session with peers. And even sometimes we've found out that MFIs can need help to co-finance salaries if there is really no previous in-house skills on the topic of the TA. So really our recommendation on that is to try to incorporate in TA programs as wide as possible range of interventions for TA, not just the intervention of expert and not just expert time. Our third main finding through this study is really that the success of a TA depends a lot on the involvement of the beneficiary organization. Might it be for defining their needs, might it be for drafting the terms of reference of the mission, to select the experts together as well. What we've found out through the surveys and interviews with the beneficiary institutions is really that this participatory approach is really the key to ensure good ownership of the TA by the beneficiary institution, and also a key to ensure that we select a relevant provider, a relevant TA provider. So this participatory approach is really something that our partner MFIs value a lot, and that they tell us is really an added value of our TA management. So our recommendations regarding that is really to, well, keep this approach, of course, to involve as much as possible the beneficiary institutions at every stage of the mission. And also in designing programs to really have in mind its time that is going to be needed to train the beneficiary institutions on the processes and to help them define their needs, because this is something that requires a lot of pedagogy, a lot of time as well, and that should really be accounted for when launching new TA programs. The fourth recommendation, first lesson we drew from the study is more on the importance of having a financial contribution from the beneficiary institutions. That's something that we always do at the foundations. We always ask for a beneficiary contribution from the institutions to ensure, well, that they remain motivated and that the mission is meeting a real need. But what we've seen also through the study is that sometimes there are limits in accounting for this participation. We know that, for instance, some costs are not always taken into account. In particular, all the time that the institutions spend on managing the TA, this is not necessarily accounted for in their contribution. And we also know that for very small institutions, it can be very challenging, especially if the financial contribution is large. So our recommendation is really in TA programs to plan for contributions that are adapted to the beneficiary institutions. And that also really reflects the effort that they put into the project. The fifth conclusion of the study is that involving the governance and involving the management team from the beginning of a project is really a big success factor for TA mission. What we've also seen through the study is that TA missions that aim at strengthening existing skills within the institutions have much bigger impact on the institutions than missions that will aim at creating brand new skills within the institution. So our finding is that having a minimum knowledge base on the topic of the TA is really key before starting any mission. So our recommendation is twofold. The first point is to really secure, before launching any mission, to secure the involvement of governance and of the management team, and to make sure that there is a minimum in-house knowledge on the topic of the TA. And also, before launching any mission, to really assess the risk of non-appropriation of the mission and not engage and not launch a TA mission if we believe that the governance and the management team are not 100% on board for this mission. Recommendation number 6 is that we believe that a strong link between the investment team and the TA team is really key to fully understand the needs of the beneficiary institutions. Of course, the due diligence that is done by the investment officers is really key to assess the needs of the institutions. But we believe that even beyond this due diligence, the investment officers have a very special relationship with the institutions. And so we believe that a model where the investment officers are playing an active role in managing TA and where there are active discussions between the TA team and the investment team is really the best model to ensure that the outcome of TA activities are the best for the beneficiary institutions. Our recommendation number 7 is more related to actually the profile of the TA providers. So over the past 8 years, we've built a large database of TA providers, local and international, but we actually rely for 60% of the missions on local providers. And actually what we found out in our study is that the satisfaction level of the beneficiary institutions is very similar, irrespective of where the consulting firms come from, if they're local or international ones. What we found out is that what really matters to the beneficiary institutions is more the skills and the knowledge of the experts on the specific topic of the TA, regardless of the origin of the providers. And also that a very, very good knowledge of the local context is very important. So all in all, our recommendation is to remain flexible on the choice of the TA providers, but of course, whenever this is possible, to try to promote local expertise. And also, and most importantly, to only select providers who have a very strong experience in the country and in the region and a very, very good understanding of local context. Another main finding of the study is more related to reporting. Of course, reporting to funders, audits, evaluations are very important tasks in a TA program. But what we've found out through the study is that sometimes the time that can be spent on these tasks can be really disproportionate with the amount of grant under management, and can also be really disproportionate with the time we spent on actually activities with a very high added value for the beneficiary institutions. So our recommendation will be really to try to simplify reports as much as possible, avoid lengthy narrative reportings, and make sure that we have reportings that are really useful and really used by all the parties. Also, our recommendation will be to have, well, respect a principle of proportionality between the grant amounts and what is asked in terms of audit, in terms of evaluation. And last of all, our recommendation will be to really simplify administrative procedures so that coordination time can really be spent on activities that have a high added value for the beneficiary institutions. Recommendation finding number 9 is actually that beneficiary institutions and TA providers alike stress really often that there is a lack of a post-mission follow-up. And yet this follow-up is really key, of course, to ensure that there's a good implementation of the recommendation, a good ownership as well of the mission. So our recommendation is really to try to integrate more this post-mission follow-up, both into the design of the missions and into the design of the TA programs. Our last recommendation was more related to impact measurement, actually. Cerise tried to, in their study, to identify a link, if there was any, between the improved performance of the beneficiary institutions and the TA. And so while they could see an overall consolidation of the MFIs, it was really difficult and really tricky for them to isolate the role of the TA in that consolidation and improvement of the performance of the institutions. That being said, we really think that it could be possible to quantify more at our level the changes that the TA brings. And so in particular to have indicators on the perception of the changes measured by the beneficiary institutions. So that's something we really intend to work on and to develop, hopefully develop our own framework in the future. But that's something really, really new and that we're still working on. So I think I'll stop here. Just to let you know, this study is available on our website, so you can easily access it online or download it if you want to have more details. And I'll stop here and I switch back to our panel and welcome again Matthew, Julie, Gabrielle, and Benedetta to try to open a little bit the discussion. Once again, please all feel free to turn on your video. I know we're all a bit shy sometimes, but I think that can be great to have a meaningful conversation. And once again, we really intend this to be an open conversation. So please feel free to jump into the conversation whenever you want, and mic yourself and speak up. So welcome again, Matthew, Julie, Gabrielle, Benedetta. I think, of course, we're not going to be able to speak today about all I've mentioned and all the recommendations. A first topic that I wanted us, though, to tackle today is the first one that I presented. So really, the idea to have a demand-driven approach. So really try to have TA activities that are really fitting to the needs of the beneficiary institutions. So Matthew, maybe I'm going to turn to you to start the conversation. Could you maybe tell us a few words, if you want, first of all, about the SNUP program, and also explain us a little bit how SNUP is functioning in terms of drafting projects and also presenting projects on a case-by-case basis? Is that something you had in mind when designing the program to really ensure that the program could stay flexible over time and to make sure that the activities will be adapted to the needs of the institutions?
So thanks, Violette, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Matthew Jensini. I work in ADA, as Violette said, and it's great to see those recommendations from your study, because I'm seeing a lot of parallels with how the SNUP program is being implemented and how we've built it. So maybe I can just quickly present the SNUP and what it is and what we're trying to do through this program. So it really is a public-private development partnership initiative that was launched by the Swiss Development Corporation and the Luxembourg government, with ADA kind of playing the role of coordinator, with three main objectives. The first one is to strengthen the resilience of smallholder farmers throughout the globe. How do we want to do that? We want to ensure that they're integrated within the agricultural value chains that they are active in. So, ensure that they have access to information, ensure that they have access to inputs, to financial services, to trainings, and so forth. So that's the first kind of level of, in terms of the objective. The second objective is to ensure the value chains within which they're operating in are strengthened. So across the value chains, whether it's upstream or downstream, what we want to ensure is those value chain actors are strengthened so that they can service the smallholder farmers better. And then the third objective of the program comes from the constat that in many developing countries, the agricultural sector plays a major part in the GDP. While if you compare that with the amount of investment going into that sector, it's very imbalanced. So what we want to do through the program is to promote additional investments within the agricultural sector. So that's the kind of main objectives of the program. And we started designing the program with impact investors. And the idea was really to build and design the program and not build anything new, actually build on existing relationships that already exist within the field and build on existing knowledge that already exists. And that's why we really kind of chose specifically to work with impact investors, because they already have built that relationship with those agricultural value chain actors. They've identified them, they've invested in them, and therefore there's no need to go through a kind of due diligence or identification process. And what we do, essentially, the SNUP is a TA fund for projects of impact investors that will then contribute to the objectives that I mentioned before. In terms of the types of projects that we can finance, this is where we're very flexible. And the reason why we're very flexible is to ensure that we're responding to the needs on the ground. We haven't come with pre-designed projects. We have 4 different categories of projects, and these are development of financial services, development of non-financial services, projects that we call market building, which are projects that link the different actors through, for example, a digital platform. And then the last one is what we call internal management. So these are projects that strengthen the investees themselves, whether it's in their kind of processes or risk management or digitalization. That's the program in very brief. The one component that I didn't mention is the knowledge management component. It's a very large component, will become increasingly important as the program progresses, because we're kind of in a unique position where we've currently got 7 impact investors who very often are, they're competing against each other to find investees. And what we're trying to do is build a unique platform for them to be able to kind of discuss and share information. And through the different projects that we're going to be implementing, we're going to have an enormous amount of knowledge and lessons learned that we'll be able to capture and then insert into a sector. And so just on your question, Violette, I think, we've designed the program to be as flexible as possible, to be demand driven, and it's very much the impact investors and their TA facilities to work with their investees to design projects that are then proposed to the program and then approved. And we've tried to ensure that we are flexible enough so that we can respond to the needs of the smallholder farmers and the investees of impact investors.
So the idea, Matthew, is really to have tailor-made projects as well, right? So as you were saying, there are broad categories of projects, but in the first projects you've seen raised to the SNUP, I imagine they're all very, very different and all fitting very, very different needs from the institutions.
Yeah, completely. I mean, for example, the first 2 projects, just to give you an example, we have one index insurance project in West Africa working with an insurance broker to develop agricultural index insurance products and some non-awareness raising, risk management awareness raising activities, compared to a project in China that's working with an MFI improve their internal processes so that they can attract additional international investors to be able to service the smallholder farmers that they want to service. So that's kind of very brief kind of example of the different kind of projects that we're receiving at our level.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. And Matthew, maybe if I stay with you, I think not related to SNUP, but more related to ADA. Actually, I believe that in some of your programs, you've been encouraging the MFIs to really define themselves, their action plan for TA. So could you tell us in few words about that, and how do you do that?
Yeah,
very concretely?
So previous to coordinating the SNUP program, I was managing the TA team for financial institutions in ADA. And one of the main challenges that we were facing is how do we ensure ownership of projects? How do we ensure that the projects will be taken on after we've gone? How do we ensure that the products that we develop are really integrated within the portfolio of the financial institution? So we piloted a coaching approach, a coaching program approach, whereby we not only provide the usual technical assistance, TA projects that fund TA projects for the institution. We also co-finance the availability of a coach, and this coach is normally locally based, has been trained on the coaching approach, and works with the level of the director or the under director of the institution, to ensure that they are not only involved in the process of the implementation of the project, but also in the design, and also that they are the ones that come with the solutions. So the coaching approach isn't an approach that comes with a solution. What it tries to do is extract the solutions from the people that know the situation the best, which are the people on the ground, the people who work in the MFIs or the director. So this is an approach that we tried, and that we've tried across different topics. We've tried it with risk management. We've tried it with governance issues and agricultural finance, and we've had a varying success, and a lot of the success really relies on the kind of relationship that is created between the coach and the director, and it's an approach that we've liked, and we've seen it as some success with.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Maybe Gabrielle and Julie, if I turn to you, could you share with us a little bit more on this topic? How do you make sure at your level, at CD's level, that the TA activities that you launch are really fitting to the needs of the institutions? How do you work, and what are your processes to make sure that happens?
Thank you very much, Violette, and good afternoon to everybody. Yes, maybe if I explain a bit how CD has, what is the approach as CD. CD, when it was created in 1983, right from the beginning, thought that we should talk of partners and not investees only when we approach our relationship with our partners, with the institutions with whom we work, in the sense that by being a social investor, of course our job is to look at the financial needs and assess the financial needs, be it through equity or through credit, but also to assess the more general needs in terms of how can we work together with the institution to be sure that the mission and the vision of the institution, when they formulate it, is implemented. And this requires to look as well financial needs and capacity building needs in terms of in the institution. That's why in our organization we don't talk of investment officers, but we talk of partnership officers. because the partnership officer is in charge of both assessing the institution and its financial needs, and also the capacity building needs. And this, I think, is really important in the approach we have, because it's at the origin of the technical assistance project that we build. When the partnership officer visits an institution for the first time, he or she is really takes the time to talk about what is the objective, the development objective of its institution, not only of how much money do you want, how much or do you need. It's really where do you want to go, and CD really strives to work with institutions with the same vision, aligned with the same vision, and for the time being, well, since a few years, aligned with our ecological and social transition goals. That's why we think that in terms of capacity building, it is really important to look the institution as a whole. And I would like just to mention a specificity of CD. When it was created, CD really started with equity investing. The major part of our investment was to take equity stakes, because we believe that a long-term partnership, through its participation in the long-term funding, in the capital, and also in the governance bodies, as a consequence, we require a seat on the board in all the equity stakes that we have, enables us to really discuss at the governance level of the development goals of the institutions, and thus the capacity building needs and its implementation. So I think that in terms of organization, we're a small team, and we ask the partnership officer to be aware of both the financial needs and the technical assistance needs. Then there is a lot of coordination and back office and such to implement a number of programs. But I think in terms of dialogue with the institution, it's important to stress on that aspect.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Julie. So yeah, we understand the special relationship you have with the MFIs as shareholder plays a big role, I think, in the way you work with them on TA. And also you mentioned the specific link between the TA, the investment officers and the TA team. So I think we'll come back to that just after, because that's another question as well. But very concretely, on a mission, on a TA mission, how do you involve the beneficiary institutions then? Are they involved in drafting the terms of reference as well? Are they involved in selecting the provider with you as well? Is that something you do?
Yes, of course. I think that right from the beginning, we start from the needs, and then it is a va-et-vient between the organization and CD in order to build the terms of reference and identify the consultants. This really right from the beginning, we work closely with the beneficiary and with the institutions. Maybe I should let also Gabrielle share the experience as a TA coordinator for FEFISOL, and maybe she can also add up on that and on the conclusions that you had in the study that you made also on your technical assistance program.
Thank you, Julie, and hi everyone. I see that I know some faces in the electronic assistance, so hi to everyone. So like Julie said, indeed, 3 years ago, we did the same kind of evaluation with our TA facility. So we had an external team that went through the 120 projects that we had funded back then to evaluate how each rose up to the expectations that we had for each project. So like Julie said, one of the results, I mean, and like you also said, Violette, one of the results of this evaluation was that it was super important that the beneficiary is involved in all the steps of the process, from the drafting of the terms of references to the selection of the service provider. And maybe to illustrate that a bit more thoroughly, I'll give the example of a bad experience that we had during which we actually did not involve the clients in the TA project. And it was, we had that project because we realized that a lot of the producers organizations that we worked with in West Africa all had some strengthening to do in their accountants. So we put together a project designed for 5 or 6 PO cocoa producers organizations in several countries in Western Africa. We drafted ourselves the terms of references, saying that these institutions all suffered from a lack of accounting formalization. And we selected one consultant that was supposed to go and visit each of the cooperative and work with them on strengthening their accounting system. And in the end, this didn't really work out because the institutions were not interested in relying on our consultants. They preferred drafting themselves with the investment officer their own terms of reference, even though they were basically the same than the ones we had designed for all of them. And they wanted to take part themselves in the process of the TA provider selection, whereas they felt that we were imposing a TA provider, even though it was a perfectly suited consultant for this type of TA. But in the end, the consultant himself never went on the field and never participated in the TA because our partners, our investees from Fafisol were not interested in this project. And the interesting part was that in the end, all of them did benefit from a TA project on accounting, but it was not the one that we had initially planned for them to be part of this big training program, which really shows that in the end, it's super important to integrate the beneficiary at all the steps of the process. And if not, then the appropriation and the level of commitments of the partners with the TA is not sufficient enough for the projects to go through.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. It can be really a big blocking point if you impose any provider. And on the terms of reference, even if in the end the institution has only minor changes or comments, it's in our experience always important, super important for the institution to, of course, validate it and be on board with it before starting a mission. Benedetta, I don't know if you want to add on this topic before we move on to the next one. In your own experience, how as a TA provider, have you seen the difference? Do you have maybe some examples of TAs where you felt it was really matching with a demand from the institution, and other TAs maybe where it was less the case, and how did it go in that case?
Yeah, thank you, Violette, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Benedetta. I am a project manager at Microfinanza. And yes, so I wanted just to add, of course, I do share everything that you have said. And from our perspective as TA provider, we do come at a later stage. So once on the one side, needs were already identified, as you have just explained. But on the other side, sometimes we also work on the other way around. So we do support financial institutions to identify their needs. And thanks to the relationship based basically also on trust that we have with some financial institutions that we have been working with for several years now. Yes, I think it's also very important in the assessment of the needs to involve on the one side the governance of the financial institutions, which is fundamental, to identify the strategic needs, let's say. So the strategic goals that the financial institution is setting for the upcoming years, but it's also really important to get an overview with the management, and so with the, let's say, more operational component of the financial institutions, so that the technical assistance can be realistically put in place when also the operational part is taken into consideration in designing the terms of reference, for example, or to identify the needs that sometimes on the ground they may differ from the needs that you can find on the top, on the top management or on the governance and the board of directors, for example.
Perfect, thanks. And how do you do then very concretely during a mission to also keep the management and governance on board?
Yeah, so
what are your tips?
As TA provider, we ensure an ongoing communication with the governance, first of all, when we start our mission. So it's really important to us to align not just, of course, with the financial institution and with the TA funder, of course, so that everyone is on the same page. So it's really important to us to understand all the needs and the expectations, of course, of the stakeholders of the TA, internally and externally. So that's the first thing. And then, of course, as you were saying previously, Violette, it's also important to really know the context in which we are working in. And we as Microfinanza, we have an extensive experience in different countries. So we ourselves as international experts, let's say, we do bring our expertise in knowing the country and to adapt the technical assistance from different point of view, but we do also rely on local consultants and local company, which is fundamental, not just from the language point of view, but also in COVID-19, as we cannot move and travel to the countries where we do implement our TA. It was fundamental to have a good local presence as well. So these are some of the tips, let's say, from the insights as a TA provider.
Excellent. Thank you, Benedetta. So maybe before we move on to the next topic, let's open up maybe to the assembly if there are any questions. Does anyone have any comment, any question on this topic of how to adapt TA to the needs of the institutions? Otherwise, I see we also have a question in the chat. Raghuram, sorry if I don't pronounce well your name, is asking if the TA activities involve change management, what will be your best practices to ensure a smooth management of the change within the institution? So maybe we can actually turn to you, Benedetta, on this one, because I imagine you definitely had some TA missions on change management.
Yes, of course, change occurs in a longer time. So sometimes TA, they are not, or they are on a shorter time. But in our experience and in our opinion, it's also important to, in order to ensure the sustainability in the longer run of the TA, not just to be, let's say, a punctual mission or based on a specific topic, of course. We as TA provider, we are hired, let's say, for a specific topic to support the financial institutions. For example, I was thinking about 2 specific projects we have implemented also with Grameen on risk management and on the environmental strategy, for example. So they were very punctual, but that was what I was saying before. It's really fundamental to involve the management and the governance in order to let the change occur. So that it's also part of our approach at the very end of the TA to propose an action plan or a strategic plan, which includes the results of our technical assistance, but it will be incorporated in the activities to be implemented by the financial institution in the upcoming, in the future, let's say, after that the TA has ended.
Yeah, to make sure the recommendations just are not forgotten and that there is a real follow-up on that.
Yeah, of course. So key recommendations, they must be discussed with the governance, of course, in order, and the results as well. And it's also, let's say, we just close the circle of where we started at the very beginning and the expectations of the governance about the TA, and then the key recommendations we close and say, okay, so this was where we began, and that's how we want to continue. And of course, it's also important to link, and I connected to the recommendations and the lessons learned from your report. It's also very important to combine the technical assistance with the investment support. So working in close collaboration between TA and investment, because of course it gives you another overview of the TA to be implemented if you combine both of them, and so financial support and non-financial support as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Benedetta. And you actually make the link to the second question I wanted to tackle. So this link, this model that we personally at the Grameen Crédit Agricole Foundation, we defend of a strong link between the TA team and the investment officers to manage TA. So Gabrielle and Julie, could you tell us in a few words how do you do that at CD? I know that as you mentioned it, and the investment officers or partnership managers, in the case of CD, are very involved in managing TA. So can you tell us concretely what are they in charge of, and what is your experience on that? Do you have any challenges with these close links between the two teams, or is it working well for you?
Thank you, Violette. Maybe I will complete a bit what I started to introduce previously on the partnership officer. It's true that we talk of partnership officers, and they are in charge of really when they start a relationship from scratch with a new institution, or when they take over from a previous colleague. As I said, they start from the beginning of talking by talking of the general objective of the institution in terms of development, in terms of long-term vision of what they want to do, what market share they want to have, what type of clients or producers they want to have, and this has an effect on the type of financing and the type of technical assistance that we will be talking of. Then when the contact is made and the initial demand is formulated by the institution, the partnership officer comes back to the partnership director and the partnership, the capacity building manager. We have a committee that meets every week or every 2 weeks to discuss those type of capacity building demands, and to really check if they fit with the partnership strategy that we already defined at the beginning of the year with each partner and each country of intervention. So and then so it is really the partnership officer that formulates this demand, this capacity building demand, and then the capacity building team defines the program, the resource, which fits better the demand. Will it be because we also created a foundation at CD to pursue our technical assistance implementation mission, la Fondation ACT, and well, through the funds that we manage, FEFISOL, that Gabrielle presented, the study that was made on the technical assistance facility that was enabled by the fund FEFISOL. We also have this kind of resource available. And now we joined the SNUP program that was also presented by Matthew. And we have a couple of other programs which enable us to check which technical assistance resource fits better the strategy that we have with each partner. So this is our really intern organization. I think that how can I give a more precision in terms of model? Really, the backbone is the partnership, I would say, the partnership, and so the partnership officer coordinates, even if it's not the implementator. He or she coordinates whatever is done with each partner.
Perfect, thanks, Julie. Yeah, I think we have someone, Hans Ram, who just raised the hand. I think you put a comment in the chat box saying that you perceive TA as something broader than just selecting consultants for the investees. So, for instance, under SNUP, we can also think of performance-based payment of local or global service providers in offering valuable services to the investees. Would you like to say a few words, Hans, before we have then another question from Birgit Galleman on post-mission follow-up? So as we have really just some minutes left, maybe we can let you speak, Hans, and then move to the follow-up question of Birgit.
Yes, thank you very much, Violette. I think it's important if you as an investor want to support your investee. Sometimes maybe it's not only one investee in a certain value chain, that we would also have the interest in order to basically to improve their business, let's say, ecosystem. And this is usually far more sustainable if there are valuable services by actually other market actors, like, for instance, local or global service providers offering valuable services to the investee, also to the end client, let's say like smallholder farmers, like a digital procurement platform, or for instance, what we funded in one case in India, to upgrade a digital warehousing system for agricultural products. So this will actually strengthen the whole value chain. So it will strengthen then also your particular investee or several investees, and it will strengthen the end clients. So in a way, we lift up the market system, which you would hardly do really for just a consultancy, whereas always the challenge that really that consultancy can be really absorbed effectively. I just want to say that they are, so we at SNUP see it very broadly, really at market building. And this is not just thinking only about consultants, but also about other market actors that can really help to improve the market situation, which will then benefit your investees. That will then also ultimately, if they broaden their transactions, that also more potential for further investment in order to close this huge smallholder finance funding gap we particularly face in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hans. I think we can all agree on this approach of saying it's very important to build a local ecosystem and actors, and not just rely, of course, on international consultants, even though they can sometimes be very useful. And I think Benedetta won't say the contrary. Maybe we just have 3 minutes left. There are so many topics to tackle, but we did have a question from Birgit Galleman, a comment saying she agrees very much on recommendation number 9 on post-mission follow-up. Yes, Birgit, did you want to share something?
Yeah, so this is my experience. I think there is often not enough time in the TA programs to do this follow-up. Actually, I wanted to say what I'm doing. I usually have tools which I tailor-make and then implement with the institution. And this allows to follow up all the time. On phone and with the tool. I see then what the people, the beneficiaries are doing with it, I see directly if it's useful for them or not. If they use it, it is usually a tool which they can implement directly in their daily work. And so if it's used, then, you know, I know this is helpful, and I can, this is this follow-up, the direct follow-up within that time. I'm directly connected with them. But so that is what I'm doing, and which works very well. I even asked sometimes in the TA to restructure a bit. I first come and then I come again, and then I have the tool to follow up directly in between. And this is so much more effective because, you know, I only need to call, or I see the tool, even what they have done with it. Have they understood the concepts which we were talking about? If they use the tool wisely with the concepts implemented, it works, I know. So I wanted to promote this idea, and the idea to give more time, more longer years, maybe, not necessarily more days, not at all, but a longer time frame where the beneficiaries have time to first digest, then to really use it, and then they can reap the benefits. So that's, I think, where I want to promote, to come to with those who provide the TA, that we have just a longer time frame, not more days. It's not more costly, and especially if we use such effective measures. So that's my big fight, or my wish, yeah, that we improve the TA work.
Perfect. That is heard. That is heard, and we agree with that. Birgit, are you working for a provider?
I'm independent consultant.
Independent consultant.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
We are, I think, reaching towards the end. Maybe Benedetta, do you want to have a last word on that topic before we wrap up? What is your perspective on this, on the lack of follow-up?
Yeah, so I do agree with Mrs. Birgit, and I perfectly agree. And it's also a matter of being accountable as financial institution, as TA provider, and also as TA funder. So of course, it's a part of the broader strategy and implementation of the TA in a broader sense, in a more comprehensive sense, to be inserted then in a strategic plan and to set up a set of indicators, let's say, to measure the impact. Of course, impact occurs as change in many years, so at least the outcome measurement and then the impact measurement of the TA itself, but also in the longer run. So the changes that occur within the financial institution, also thanks to the technical assistance, which are of course part of a broader strategy, as I was saying before. So yes, I perfectly agree.
Perfect. Thank you, Benedetta. Thank you all. We're unfortunately already reaching the end of the session. Thank you very much to all of you for attending. I think it can be a little bit frustrating because we could go on and go on on this topic for quite a long time, but I think it was very nice to get all connected today. So we'll be pleased to continue the discussion with you individually as well. And once again, if you want to see as well the study, you can access it on our website. So thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today. And hopefully talk to you soon and continue the discussion further individually.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Goodbye.
Bye, Violette.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.